Forgiveness is not the feeling you have been waiting for. It is a door, and most of us keep praying at the wall, right beside the handle. Jesus taught us to pray one line we repeat without thinking. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. You have tried to mean it. You have knelt and asked to feel clean, and for a moment you did. Then Tuesday came, and the old scene played again behind your eyes. Maybe they never apologized. Maybe they never will. The words returned to your lips, but the weight never left your chest. That instinct is not wrong. Every one of us waits for the warmth, the softening, the sense that it is finally over. But what if the thing you keep waiting to feel was never the door at all? What if it was the wall you built while your hand rested inches from the latch? Because the word your Bible prints as forgive was not, at its root, a feeling. In the language Jesus' first hearers knew, it was a physical word, aphiemi, to send away, to release, the same word a creditor used when he canceled a debt. And once you see that single word, this prayer stops feeling like a burden you keep failing to lift. One word, one image, and every verse about grace you thought you understood begins to crack open. So if grace has ever felt too hard to hold, stay with me and comment the name of what you are still carrying, because the door was never the feeling. Let me show you where the handle has been all along. So let me start where everything today begins, with a single word. This is the first thing you have to see, because once it moves, the whole prayer moves with it. When you read, "Forgive us our debts," your mind almost certainly hears a feeling. To forgive, we assume, is to soften. It is to reach some inner state where the sting is gone and you finally feel warm toward the person again. So we wait for that feeling. We wait, and when it does not come, we decide we must not have forgiven at all. Here is the problem. That is not what the word says. The prayer was not first spoken in English. Jesus and the people around him lived in the world of Greek, and the word Matthew wrote down is aphiemi. It is not a soft word. It is a working word, a word with hands. Break it open, and you find two smaller pieces, apo, which means away from, and hiemi, which means to send. Put them together, and forgiveness is not a mood at all. It is an action, to send away, to let go, to release something you have been holding. Open a Greek lexicon, the dictionary scholars actually use, and you see the same thing. Aphemi means to release, to dismiss, to cancel, to send off. It carried no drama and no warmth. It described a hand that has been gripping something tightly, and then simply opens. That is the door I promised you. Not a feeling that finally floods in, but a hand that decides to open. Do you feel the difference? A feeling is something that happens to you. You cannot command it. You cannot schedule it for Tuesday morning. But an action is something you do. And that is the quiet revolution hiding inside this one word. Forgiveness, in the mouth of Jesus, was never a feeling you have to manufacture before it counts. It was a release you choose to make, whether or not the warmth ever arrives. This is why grace can feel so impossibly hard. We have been straining to produce the one thing the word never asked us to produce. We keep trying to feel forgiven and to feel forgiving, and we exhaust ourselves at the wall, when the whole time the word was pointing at our hand and the thing still clenched inside it. The handle was in our grip the entire time. Now, I know how this sounds. It is easy to say release, and far harder to do it, especially when the debt against you is real and the wound is deep. We will get to that. We will get to the person who never said sorry and the God who somehow forgives anyway. But before any of that, you have to trust the word. And the fastest way to trust it is to stop looking at it in church for a moment and to watch where this same word shows up out in ordinary life, in nets and in prisons and in money, because that is where aphiemi shows its real shape. Now for the fastest way to trust what we just found. Take this word out of church for a moment and watch it work in the ordinary world, where nobody is thinking about sin or heaven at all. Aphiemi was a common word. Fishermen used it. When they were done for the night, they would leave their nets and walk away, and the word for that leaving was aphiemi. You can almost see it. The rope slips out of the hands, the net drops to the sand, and the man turns for home. Something held. Something released. Something left behind. Sailors used it too. To let a boat run before the wind, to loosen the rope and let it go, was aphiemi. A landlord used it when he released a tenant from what was owed. A judge used it when he dismissed a case and let the accused walk out of the courtroom free. In the world of money, it was the ordinary word for canceling a debt, wiping the amount off the record so that it simply no longer existed. Do you notice what every one of these has in common? None of them is a feeling. The fisherman does not have to feel affectionate toward his net. The judge does not have to feel warm toward the prisoner. The creditor does not sit and wait for a soft glow before he clears the account. Each one is a plain, physical act, a hand that was holding something and then let it fall. I want to give you a phrase to carry through the rest of today. Physics before theology. Before this word ever meant anything about God, it described something you could watch happen in the world. A thing gripped, then dropped. A weight carried, then set down. A rope held, then released into the wind. That is the shape of the word underneath everything else. And the shape never changes when Jesus picks it up. He is not inventing a new feeling. He is taking a common, physical action and telling you it is the shape of what happens when sin is forgiven. And that changes what forgiveness asks of you. If it is an event and not a mood, then it does not wait on your emotions to catch up. You can release a thing on a day when you feel nothing. You can open your hand while your heart is still angry. The net can be down on the sand long before you feel ready to walk home. So, we have watched the word move out in the open, in nets and courtrooms and ledgers. Now comes the harder part, because it is one thing to talk about a debt in general. It is another thing entirely to put your own name on it. So let us do exactly that. So here is the third step, and this is where the word stops being about fishermen and starts being about you. Look closely at what Jesus actually asked you to pray. Not forgive us our mistakes, not forgive us our bad feelings, forgive us our debts. Sit with that word for a moment, because he chose it on purpose. A debt is not a mood. A debt is a record. It is a number written in a book, an amount that stands against your name whether you think about it today or not. You can forget a debt. You can distract yourself from a debt. But forgetting does not make it smaller, and distraction does not make it disappear. It waits. It sits there on the page, patient and exact, until someone does something about it. That is a startling way to picture sin. We tend to imagine sin as a stain on the heart, a vague sense that we are not quite good enough. But Jesus hands you a ledger instead. Picture a long column, and at the top of the page is your own name. And every line is something owed. Every unkind word you meant to take back. Every promise you let quietly die. Every person you were supposed to love, and simply did not. Line after line, and none of them crossed out. The Apostle Paul reaches for the very same picture. He tells the followers of Jesus in Rome to owe no one anything except to love one another. Do you hear what he just did? He called love itself a debt you can never fully pay off, because tomorrow morning you will owe it all over again. So this is not a small account we are talking about. By the honest measure of love, every single one of us is deep in the red, and the number keeps climbing. And here is why that matters for grace. If sin were only a feeling, you could handle it yourself. You could talk yourself into feeling better, wait for time to soften it, decide one morning to simply move on. But a debt does not work like that. A debt cannot be wished away. It has to be paid, or it has to be canceled. Those are the only two doors out of the room. And the terrible math of it is this. If it must be paid, you are the one who has to pay it, and you do not have enough. Not nearly enough. So notice what quietly happens to most of us. We spend our whole lives trying to pay the debt down. We try to be good enough, kind enough, religious enough, sorry enough, to work the number back to zero. And it never reaches zero. That is exactly why grace feels so impossibly hard. You are exhausting yourself, trying to pay an amount that was only ever meant to be released. But maybe you are still holding out. Maybe you are thinking, fine. Cancel my debt, and we are done. Except the prayer does not stop there. Jesus ties your debt to another one in the very same breath, as we forgive our debtors. And that second clause is where this gets genuinely hard. So let us walk straight into it. So we arrive at the fourth thing, and it is the hardest half of the sentence. As we forgive our debtors, Jesus does not let you hold your ledger and ignore everyone else's. In the same breath, he asks God to release your debt. He points at the people who owe you, and he tells you to open your hand toward them too. He told a whole story about this. A servant owed his king an impossible amount, something like 10,000 talents, a sum so large it would have taken many lifetimes of wages to repay. Put it in today's terms, and you are looking at millions upon millions of dollars. The king cancels all of it in a single sentence. And then that same servant walks outside, finds a man who owes him a few months of pay, and grabs him by the throat and demands every coin. We hear that and we think, how could he? And Jesus quietly answers, you are him, every time you clutch a small debt after being released from an enormous one. But here is the honest struggle, and I am not going to pretend it away. What do you do when the person never says sorry? When they will never admit it, never make it right, when they have moved away or moved on, or they are no longer even alive to ask? Are you supposed to wait forever, holding the wound open, until an apology arrives that is never coming? This is where the difference between the word and the feeling saves you. Because if forgiveness were a feeling, you would be trapped. You would have to wait for warmth that may never come. But forgiveness is a release, an action, and you can make it whether or not the other person ever participates. There is forgiveness that is transactional, a handshake where both sides meet and reconcile. And that is beautiful when it happens. But there is also forgiveness that only you make, where you release the debt into God's hands even though the other person never picks up their end. You can send the debt away without their signature. Let me give you an image to make this real. Imagine a great bell hanging in a tower and a heavy rope hanging down from it. For years you have been holding that rope with both hands, gripping the offense, keeping the bell silent and still. To forgive is simply to let the rope go, and when you finally do, the bell rings out. Bong. But here's what nobody tells you. The sound does not stop the instant you release the rope. It keeps ringing and fading and ringing for a long time afterward. That echo is your feelings, the anger, the ache, the memory that returns at night. Releasing the rope does not silence the echo right away. But do not mistake the echo for the rope. The letting go already happened. The feeling is just the sound of it slowly dying down. So do you feel the weight of both clauses now? You have been forgiven, an amount you could never repay. And you are still standing there, hand closed around someone else's smaller debt, waiting to feel like letting it go. And I know exactly what is rising up in you as I say this. There is an objection, and it is a fair one. If forgiveness is just an action I choose, doesn't that make it cheap? Doesn't that make it fake? That question deserves an honest answer, so let us give it one. So let us take the fifth thing head on, because this channel will not dodge the hard question. If forgiveness is just an action I choose, and not a feeling that wells up from somewhere deep, then hasn't it become cheap? Hasn't it become fake? A cold decision with no heart in it at all? Here is the honest answer. The opposite is true. Waiting for the feeling is the cheap version, because it costs you nothing but time. Choosing to release when everything in you wants to hold on, that is the costly one. That is love, with its sleeves rolled up. A parent does not always feel warm toward a screaming child at 3 in the morning, yet they get up and they care for that child anyway. Was that love fake because the feeling lagged behind the act? No. That was love at its purest. Love that acted before the emotion arrived to reward it. But let me be careful and fair here, because the word is wider than one picture. Aphemi is not only a business term about ledgers. In the hands of the New Testament, it carries the weight of law, of covenant, of eternity itself. Releasing a real debt is costly, and the cross will show us just how costly. I am not shrinking forgiveness. I am showing you where its true center of gravity sits. Not in your feelings, but in an act. And that unlocks the question that haunts so many sincere believers. If I am already forgiven, why does the guilt keep coming back? Why do I still have to pray, forgive us, day after day, as if it never took? Here is the piece almost nobody explains. There is a difference between your standing and your fellowship. Think of a child in a good home. When that child does something wrong, they do not stop being a son or a daughter. Their place in the family is not up for renegotiation. But something does go quiet. The closeness, the ease, the warmth at the dinner table. And when they come and say sorry, they are not buying their way back into the family. They already belong. They are simply restoring the closeness that the wrong had strained. That is what daily forgiveness is. When you pray, "Forgive us," you are not begging God to reconsider whether He will keep you. The debt was canceled at the cross, once and for all. You are stepping back into the nearness you were made for. The condemnation is gone. What returns is the invitation to walk close again. So feel how the ground has shifted. Forgiveness is not a mood you must manufacture before it counts. It is an act, already issued in your favor, that you are simply invited to live inside of. And every time the old weight creeps back, you do not start over. You return to what is already true. But there is an image older than all of this. And your body would have understood it long before your mind did. Let me take you there. Now, I want you to slow down with me, because we are reaching back to the oldest picture of forgiveness in the whole Bible. Long before anyone wrote down the prayer, once every year the people of Israel gathered for a single solemn day, the Day of Atonement. And at the center of it stood 2 goats. Watch what happens, because it is strange and unforgettable. The high priest lays both his hands on the head of one goat, and out loud he confesses over it every sin of the people, the greed, the betrayals, the cruelty, the whole year's ledger spoken over the animal until, in that ancient imagination, the weight has passed from the people onto the goat, and then the goat is led away. Out through the camp, out past the last tent, out into the wilderness, until it grows smaller and smaller against the horizon, and finally it is gone. And the people stand there and watch their sin walk away and never come back. Now hear the word underneath it all. When the Greek translators of the Old Testament reached for a word to carry this, they used the family of aphiemi, the sending away. And they used the same root for something even larger, the year of Jubilee. Every 50th year, a trumpet would sound across the land, and by law, every debt was canceled, every slave was set free, every family got their lost land back. They called it a release, the same word, aphesis. A whole nation, exhaling at once. Do you see what God has been showing His people from the very beginning? Forgiveness has a direction. It moves away from you. It is a burden lifted off your shoulders and carried out past the edge of the camp, where you never have to see it again. Let me bring this out of history and put it in a kitchen. Imagine a man, the kind you may already know, who carried a debt no court could measure. His own father had wounded him in ways that shaped every year of his childhood. And that father died without ever once saying he was sorry. There was no handshake, no reconciliation, no scene where everything gets made right. For decades, he carried it, and it made him hard and tired and far away from the people he loved. And then one ordinary morning, at his kitchen table, he did the thing this whole prayer had been asking of him. He did not wait to feel warm. He simply released it, out loud to God. He named the debt his father owed him, the childhood, the tenderness, the words he never got, and he sent it away. He said, "I am not collecting on this anymore." And here is the part worth holding on to. The anger did not vanish that morning. The bell was still ringing, but the rope was out of his hands for the first time in 40 years. And slowly, over the months that followed, a man who had been clenched his whole life began, at last, to open. That is what this word does when it stops being an idea and becomes a decision. The goat walks into the wilderness. The trumpet sounds over the fields. A tired man lets go at his kitchen table. In every one of them, something held is finally sent away. But there is one more question left, the deepest one of all. How can a holy God simply release a debt that is truly owed? Where does it actually go? So, come with me to the answer. So here is the 7th and final thing, and it answers the question we could not skip. If God simply releases a debt that is truly owed, where does that debt actually go? A judge who lets every criminal walk free is not merciful. He is corrupt. So how is God both perfectly just and perfectly forgiving at the same time? Here is the answer the whole Bible has been walking toward. The debt did not disappear. It was carried. Remember the goat that took the weight out past the edge of the camp? That was only ever a picture, a rehearsal, pointing to a day when God would take the sin of the world and lay it not on an animal, but on himself. At the cross, the debt was not ignored. It was paid, and paid in full by the only one who did not owe it. Listen to how the New Testament says it. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. And the word printed there as forgiveness is the very same word we started with, aphesis. The release, the sending away. So when you trace the whole line, it lands here. Your debt was real, it was named, and it was carried away on the shoulders of Jesus, out past the edge of every camp, into a wilderness from which it never returns. Now feel what that does to the prayer you began with. Forgive us our debts is not you begging at a locked door, hoping that one day God might feel like opening it. The releasing has already been done. The price has already been paid. The door is already open. You are not standing outside pounding to get in. You are standing in front of a door that swung wide 2,000 years ago, with your hand resting inches from a handle you keep forgetting is there. So here is what to do when grace feels impossibly hard. Do not go looking for a feeling. Do the thing the word actually asks. Name the debt, whether it is the one you owe or the one someone owes you. Say it plainly to God, and then release it. Send it in the same direction God already sent yours, toward the cross, out past the edge of the camp, out where you will not have to keep carrying it. You will not always feel free the moment you do it. The bell may go on ringing for a while, but the letting go is real the instant you choose it, whether or not the warmth has caught up yet. That is not cheap. That is the most costly and the most freeing thing a human being can do. So let us go back now to where we started, to the wall and the handle and the door most of us keep praying beside without ever touching. Because once you have seen this one word, you can never look at that door the same way again. And I want to show you, in these last moments together, exactly how to reach out and open it. So here we are, back at the wall. But you are not the same person who stood here at the start. Look at it now. The door was never locked from your side. Your hand was on the handle the whole time. Forgiveness is not a feeling you wait for, but a release you choose. Not a stain you scrub, but a debt you send away. Not a wound kept open, but a rope let go. Not a warmth that finally arrives, but a hand that finally opens. Not you pounding on heaven, but heaven's door already swung wide. So let me ask you the harder question now. Not what do you feel, but what are you still holding? Whose debt is still clenched in your fist tonight? You have carried it long enough. Pray the words again, slowly, with new ears. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. This time, let the words do to you what they were made to do. Hear it now, not as a burden, but as an invitation to set down what was never yours to carry. This is the good news. The account against you is closed. The prison you thought you lived in never had a lock. You do not have to feel worthy to walk through it. You only have to walk. Grace was never the feeling. It was always the open door. If a name came to mind just now, comment it below. Just say, I am sending this one away. Your words might be the courage someone else needs to open their own door. If this helped, give it a like so it reaches them, and subscribe, because next time we open another word, sin itself, and why it first meant something as simple as missing the mark. So go in peace, forgiven and free. May the God who carried your debt away fill you with the grace you no longer have to earn. May you rest in a forgiveness you did not buy and cannot lose. The door is open. Walk through. Until next time, keep digging deeper.